Sort of a deep run that I did yesterday in the big 109, so let's jump right into the action, shall we? Started off here with we have the 7-3 suited and the big blind. This is definitely a call. We're getting very good odds with a suited hand, and with this action we're going to be check folding here. Queen 7 the next hand, folding. King 6 is going to be a fold as well. Queen deuce we can definitely defend here, getting almost 3-1, and we have a suited hand, so pretty easy defend. But this is not the board that we would like to see, so we're just going to go for the check fold. 4-5 suited, laying it down. Ace jack, we're going for the 3x raise from the hijack. We get a call here. This is definitely a board you want a continuation bet. We have the gut shot, we got the overcard, and this is generally hitting our range more than the guy on the small blind. He can have a lot of 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, obviously deuces, 3s, 4s type hands that are just going to be check folding this flop. So c-bet here is necessary. The guy goes for the check raise though, which is very interesting. We decide to go for the float, and the turn card is not very pleasant. I mean, he semi-bluffs on dry boards such as this are mainly queen jack, but we are blocking queen jack, so I think we just need to lay it down on this turn, and we do. Nice 7, we are folding. Defending the pocket deuces here, going for the check, and the guy decides to check back. At this point, I expect him to have some showdown value, a hand like an 8 or maybe pairs from queens through 9s that you know, generally have some showdown but don't want to bet here, and are checking behind pot control. I think he's betting most of his kings here, and I think he's betting most of his whiffs here, like all the jack 10s, queen jacks, queen 10s, ace highs that haven't connected. So we just decide to check again. He bets, and based on our read that he has a hand with some showdown, we let it go. 4-5, we're folding here, and this is one of the more interesting hands. We have ace king in the button, pretty standard 3-bet here. The guy decides to go for the 4-bet. I'm expecting him to do this sometimes with hands like ace jack, ace queen, pocket 8s, pocket 9s, wanting to get it in because we are just 3-betting from the button so much, and with a hand like ace king suited, this is basically the top of our range. So 4-bet shoving, we get called, and we managed to win a huge flip for a double up. Laying down the 8-6, king 9 is going to be a fold, 6-4 as well. This is a fold too. 7-3. I mean, if it was suited, I would definitely defend. But you know, this is just the bottom of our range here in the big blind, so I think it's a reasonable fold. Folding the 9-8. Not many spots here, so we are opening king queen offsuit from under the gun +1, standard open. 3 bet, kind of a smallish 3 bet. So in position here, I like a call. We're getting better than 2 to 1. So we do call, and the guy checks here. So this is a this is a very low board. Obviously, if he has a hand like he has, we can see his hand now, like ace king, ace queen. He might decide to bet here, and he might decide to check his over pairs as well, because this is not really a board that really connects with our range that much. I decide to go for the check back for that reason, because I expect him to have over pairs there sometimes. 7 is an interesting turn. In retrospect, I think I should have barreled this card. I still have some 5s in my range, some 6-5 suiteds, 4-5 suiteds, pocket 5s, that I would play exactly this way. But I just decided to check it back, and the guy bets like 1/4 of the pot on the river. I mean, this is a spot where we can be good. Like, in order for us to make this call profitably, we have to be good like 1 out of every 4 times, 4.5 times. So, once in a blue moon, he might have a hand like King Jack or King 10 that just decided to 3 bet and give up on the flop, and now he's doing the smallish blocker bet on the river. But yeah, I expect ace king most of the times, but I still end up making the call. We're not good, obviously. 10-6. This is a reasonable defend. We're getting very good odds, so we complete. And this is not the best board for our hand. And especially when we get a continuation bet from the original raiser and a flat from the guy on the button, we just can comfortably lay it down here. 7 is going to be a fold. We have ace king here. Going for a pretty standard 3 bet. This guy is relatively short. He has like 25, 27-ish blinds, so happy to get it in versus him. He folds, we take it down pre-flop. We get a raise here from under the gun +1 and a flat from the low jack, and we decide to 3 bet here, make it 1,200. This is a very good spot to do this with his hand. You have a blocker for all their strong hands in general, and at the same time you want your range to be balanced, so you can mix in hands like these low suited aces as bluffs in these particular spots, because they have good equity versus almost anything. So we 3 bet and we managed to take it down pre-flop. 4-6 suited as a fold. We got ace king again. 3 betting here, pretty standard. Giving him a little bit better than 2 to 1 to call, and he makes the call. This is a board that I would like to see bet in general, like 1/3 of the pot, because I don't expect to get check raised by pairs like 7s, 8s, 9s, even 10s here, because we're repping a range that beats those hands, so I expect them to check call, which can potentially give us the option to check back the river and realize our potential 6-outer. And at the same time, when you bet here, you're protecting your hand versus all the random overcards he might have flatted the 3 bet with, like the 10-9 suited, Jack 10 suited, and so on. So we bet 1/3 of the pot here, and we take it down. And the very next hand we have aces. I decided to raise 3x. I remember usually I would raise 2.5x, but just with the dynamic on the table, with me three betting twice in the last like 6 hands. I think that at least I thought if my opponents are paying attention, they would think that I'm very aggressive. So I decided to make it a little bit bigger in hopes that somebody plays back at us because of our aggressive image. Uh, but yeah, we just steal the blinds and we're switching tables here. We have pocket eights in the big blind. This is definitely a pretty standard call. I wouldn't want to 3-bet here and be in a tough spot if I get 4-bet shoved on, so I think calling is good here. It's a pretty decent board for our hand. We generally want to check almost all of our hands when defending the big blind to the original aggressor, so we do that here, and it checks all around. Turn is a 4, which gives us pretty much the nuts. Like the only hand that's beating us is 8-9. I think it's pretty unlikely, even though we can see the hand of our opponent. It's a very innovative call from this position versus a UTG +1 raiser. But with us having 2 8s blocking most of the 8s combinations, I just pretty much think we have the nuts here. I think the original aggressor of this guy, if they had a hand like a set, they will definitely bet the flop. The original raiser might bet flush draws as well as this guy when it checks to him. So I'm not really worried about any river. I would much rather check here and let one of them bluff, or let him catch up with like some top pair on the river and bet like half-ish pot in hopes to get called. So the action checks around here and the river is an ace. Now I decide to bet a little bit over half the pot. The original aggressor folds and this guy raises me, which is pretty interesting. I mean, he might have 8-9. That's only 2 combos though, at least in my eyes, the suited combos. But if he's defending, if he's flatting with the a6 offsuit, he definitely he may be flatting the 8-9 off there as well. But I don't know. This guy was just like a fishy player. He might even have a hand like a 3 here, and he just thinks it's good, and he's trying to value raise. So I just decided to jam it. He called, and we chopped the pot. Queen 9 suited, folding from the small blind. Or uses a fold, as well as the Queen Jack offsuit. We have Ace King here, going for a 3-bet, and we get a flat from the small blind, which is very interesting. I mean, the majority of his range should be pocket pairs and some hands like maybe Ace Jack suited, Ace Queen off sometimes, but we flop flush draw with overcards. I decide to bet a little bit bigger here, and we take it down, which is a nice result. Ace King again. We're again a 3x raise, and we go for the 3-bet and take it down pre-flop. Ace 7 suited. We decided to fold on the button. This hand plays good as a 3-bet from this position, but if you're 3-betting all the suited aces from late position all the time, you're gonna end up over bluffing. So you should generally choose your spots and do it from time to time. This time I decided to fold. 6-8. This is definitely a defend versus this player. I remember he was raising a lot from the small blind, so we're pretty comfortable to play in position versus him with this hand. And we flop good shot and a flush draw, which is pretty decent. At this point he checks. Now, an aggressive player like this, I would expect him to bet most of his top pairs, over pairs, sets, and as well I would expect him to bet all the cards that, all the hands that missed this flop. I would expect him to bet like Queen Jack, King Queen, all the Ace X type hands. But when he checks, I think he has some sort of a showdown. He might have a hand like Ace 3. He might have a hand like a 7, or he might have a hand like even like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, or pocket 4s, 5s. You know, a hand that would generally check call, but you know, is like second pair or worse. But you know, with that being said, once he checks, I go for the bet here because we have a lot of equity versus those types of hands, and we want to build a pot in position in case we mark our hand. At the same time, it's we can outplay him on later streets. And now the ace comes. I don't particularly think this is the best river for us because he definitely has hands like ace 3 and ace 7 that he's gonna play exactly the same way. And if I go and bet this turn, if we get check raised, we are in a very tough spot with potentially a lot of outs. So I decided to check it back here. And the river is the jack of diamonds. He checks, and I think I just gave up at this point. Checked it down, and his 7 was good. We call from the cutoff here. We have a min raise, a flat. We call, and the small blind call as well, and we flop a good shot to the nuts, as well as a backdoor flush draw. Now, when this guy bets here, I expect him to have a king a lot of the times. Obviously, we can see his hand; he's just doing it with ace high. But I was thinking, if you're betting into 3 people, especially this sizing, you're gonna have a king a lot of the times, and sometimes a hand maybe like queens, you know, jacks, stuff like that. I decided to call. We are in position, and we have a lot of good turn cards, potential backdoor equity. So the turn comes at 6, and now he decides to check. The problem if we barrel this turn is that if he has a king in this spot, he's always almost playing it like this. He's betting the flop and he's checking the turn, because he wouldn't usually want to go 3 streets when the second pair has paired on the board. So if we decide to bet here, we should make it about 2,500 to size up the river jam, and just jam any river and pray that he folds a king or queens, jacks, and hands like that. But I just don't think I didn't think this guy was the probability of him folding a king, which is what I thought he had the majority of his range, is big. So I just decided to check it back here, and yeah, didn't pull the trigger. He takes it out with ace high. Pocket 6s, we are opening here. We get 3 bet by a very aggressive player from the button, and we go for the call. This is a very good flop for our hand. I'm gonna be check calling a lot here, especially smaller sizings, because all his Broadway combos bricked here. So yeah, we're checking. He bets like 1/3 of the pot, and we are happy to call. Now the turn is a jack. We're going for the check again. and the guy goes for the check back. The river is a 10. That's a pretty awful river because all his 10x and ace, all his king 10s and ace 10s beat us now. Um, he has a lot of queens in his range as well, potentially ace queen, king queen, stuff like that, and we're not really representing a lot of queens here when we check call this flop. So pretty awful river card. I check, he decides to check it back, and we see the bad news. We got the 7-8 here versus the guy that opened the 7-6 offsuit last time. We can comfortably call versus this cat. Um, and now he checks again, which is pretty much like the last time. I expect him when he checks to have some kind of showdown, like a second pair, like pocket 9, some sort of an 8. I think he's gonna continuation bet all his kings, and he's gonna continuation bet all his like good shots and ace highs, and just hand that completely missed. So we decide to go for the check back here, and the turn is a 7, which is a pretty interesting turn. Now he decides to bet at this point. You can make an argument of both raising here and just flatting. I think in general, maybe in retrospect, it's better to raise this board, but just because there's a lot of cards that make your hand a lot worse, like any king, any 10, any 9, any 6, any jack. But I just didn't want to blow the pot out of proportion, and I expect him to have some strong holdings as well once he checks. If he's balanced here, I never expect him to have nothing, but he can check some pocket 10s on the flop. He can check some pocket kings. I ultimately decided to go for the flat here, and the river is a queen, which is a pretty interesting card. He decides to check. And at this point we go for the value bet, a little bit under half the pot. He tanked for a little bit and decided to call us with his 10, so that was a pretty good result. In retrospect, I think if I raised the turn, he might have folded right there, so by doing this we got value on the river, so it worked out for us. Pocket kings here. This is one of the big hands that we played. So we open pocket kings, 2.2 big blinds, pretty standard raise. We get a flat from the hijack, the cutoff as well, and the small blind, which is the guy that 3-bet us with king 10 suited, decides to make it 2k. So at this point, I don't want to 4-bet him because there is potential with the stacks behind being as short as they are that somebody might just decide to rejam if I flat with a hand like pocket 9s or pocket 8s, and at the same time if I 4-bet, I just think this guy is 3-betting a lot of weak hands here that are not going to continue if I 4-bet here, so I just decided to go for the flat with the kings. And here's the interesting part. The guy with the queen jack decides to rip it in, and the guy with the king 7 suited decides to overjam. And now back to the guy with the ace jack, he pows it in. So we're pretty happy to call with the kings here, obviously. Going 4 ways, pretty scary flop. Everybody has a piece, but we managed to hold the best hand and to win a huge pot here. A6, relatively easy defend from the big blind. We were expecting him to continuation bet all of his range here, so we're going for the check call. Turn is a 7. That's a very interesting card. At this point, I think if he had a hand like he might check back some kings on this turn, particularly the ones with a spade, like a king queen with the queen of spades. He would also check back a hand like jacks, queens here. So he checks back, and the river is a 10, which is very interesting. At this point, I think we just have to jam. Just because we are getting him a lot of his king x, like the king queen with the queen of spades, king jack with the jack of spades, even a potential just king with the king of spades. We're getting him off queens, jacks for sure, and some tens that he might have rivered. He might have just see bet a hand like queen 10, jack 10, ace 10, and he suddenly has the best hand. But we have a lot of nines in our range in general, all the 8 nines, 7 nines, 10 nines. We have some flushes as well, so I just think with the way this hand played out, we just have to jam the river. So we pile it in, and we get a fold, which is nice. We have pocket tens here. We get it under the gun raise, UTG +1 flat, and we decide to 3-bet. The original raiser folds, and under the gun +1 guy calls. So the flop comes jack high. I think it's reasonable to bet and to check here. Sometimes I wouldn't expect him to have a lot of jack X type holdings, unless it's like ace jack suited, maybe king jack suited, queen jack suited. But I decided to check it back, control the size of the pot here. The turn is an 8, which is a relatively safe card for us, but he should have a lot of pocket 6s, pocket 7s, pocket 8s type hands in his range as well. So we are not super thrilled about this card, but once he checks, I would expect him to bet all of his sets here. Once he checks, we're happy to put in a bet here, protecting our hand from overcards and a hand like the one he has, pocket 9s. He decides to go for the check call. The river is a 5. He decides to check. I check it back. We see the bad news. But ultimately, if I bet the flop, I think he's definitely calling. I would have probably checked the turn, checked back the turn, and on the river we would have been in a very tough spot because he would have probably value bet. So I think we lost the minimum in that hand. Quite unlucky though. Folding the ace 7 as well. Not much action here. Here, I don't know, like it's close. You might want to complete because you're getting 7-1, but you're playing with a very bad hand from out of position versus 2 players, and the big blind being as aggressive as he is, he might squeeze a lot. So I think folding is okay with the jack 5. If it was suited, I would definitely put in the extra 200 chips though. Ace 8, we get a limp from the low jack. We're on the button. We decide to isolate this guy, making it a little bit over 3x. calls. Flop comes king high, he checks. We bet a bit over half of the pot, and he folds, so we take it down. Pocket fours here, going for a raise, and this guy jams. I expect him to be jamming a lot of hands like this, a lot of king jack, king queen, ace 10, ace 8 suited even, you know, a lot of hands we're flipping against. So at this point we're getting very good odds to call. Obviously sometimes we're going to be dominated by bigger pairs, but I think this is just plus EV call versus a guy as aggressive as this, especially with our stack size. We can afford to call it off. We do. We're flipping, but unfortunately he hits a 10 on the flop, so we lose that one. Ace queen we're opening up here, and we take it down. 7-6, we get a walk. Jack 5. I would usually limp this hand, as well as a huge part of my range from the small blind. I just think it's a good strategy, but I remember this guy just being very aggressive from the big blind. As you can see, he has raised 5 times out of 7 from the big blind when somebody limped. So, you know, I'm not happy to limp call a 3x raise from him with Jack 5 and play out of position. And I just think he's raising a lot here, so I just decided to let it go. King deuce, gonna be a fold. 8-9 fold. Jack 8. We could potentially open this hand, but with the short stack on the button, I think it's close, and the small blind as well, because if you raise, you're basically committing yourself versus these guys. So fold here is okay. Then we get pocket queens, going for the raise, and we get a flat from the small blind, and we flop a full house here. I think checking it back is reasonable here. We do that, and the turn is ace of clubs. Small blind checks again. We go for a bet, a little bit over half the pot. We expect him to have a lot of aces in his range, some club draws as well. We get a call. So on the river he checks, and I fire like 2/3 of the pot type bet. He can call here with an ace if he puts us on a hand like king jack, king 10 with the king of clubs. Ultimately though, he decides to fold, so we take it down. Ace queen here. This is a very interesting spot as well. So the small stack goes all in for just 3 blinds, and now the button decides to rejam 36 big blind stack, which is definitely not the right play to be doing with ace 8 here. So I have ace queen in the big blind, and at this point I'm very happy to call. I don't think he ever has a hand that's dominating us. He's obviously, if he has like aces, kings, queens, even a hand like tens or like ace jack, he's gonna be flatting maybe with the absolute top of his range, and maybe making it like 3k with a hand like ace jack or something, but he just decides to pile it in. So I expect this to be ahead of his range, heavy in this spot. We're gonna be flipping, of course, versus some pairs he might decide to do this with, like 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, but for the most part ace queen is just, you know, crushing his range here. We go for the call, and we manage to hold the best hand, so we win a huge pot here. 4 suited. We would be defending if it wasn't for the 3-bet. So now the button jams it in here for 7 big blinds. We have a6 offsuit. This is doing pretty well against his jamming range here. We decide to go for the call. Big blind folds, and we managed to hold the best hand. Ace 3, we're just gonna fold versus a 15.5 big blind shove. Queen 10, we decide to open here. From the low jack, the high jack flats. Everybody else folds. Queen high flop. This is generally a c-bet spot. I decide to bet a little bit under half of the pot, and our opponent folds, so we take it down. Pocket 7s here. Decide to raise. The guy folds. So we open King 9 on the cutoff here, and we get a call from the guy that only has 6 big blinds. Now when the ace high board comes, I just think I just have to jam here. If he has an ace, he has an ace. He's mostly, I think he's jamming his aces pre-flop, so I'm not really worried about that. I would generally think he's flatting a hand that can connect on some boards, like even like some 7-8 offsuit type hand, and he's gonna just open jam if he hits a pair. But you know, he just checked. We jam the king high here, folds, so we take it down. King queen, we're gonna be laying it down versus this jam. Have ace king here, and yeah, this is definitely gonna be a reshove spot, as we do, and we managed to hold, so that's nice. Let's keep the hand here. Yeah. So this is a different table. We have ace 8 suited in the big blind. It's pretty easy to defend. We go for the call, go for the check on this board. The guy continuation bets. You know, as you can see, I've only played 30 hands with this guy, so I don't have much information. So generally going for the check fold here. You might make some plays because you have a lot of backdoor potential barrel cards, but yeah, just decided to lay it down. King deuce is a fold from the small blind. If we were in the big blind, we will definitely be defending this hand. Jack 7, you can make a case for 3-betting here or letting it go. If you decide to 3-bet this hand from the button, just don't 3-bet it always, because you're gonna end up over bluffing. We let it go this time. Deuce is here. We got a call from the button. This is interesting hand. We decide to check and give up at this point. We make a flush on the turn. Now we check. He bets 2k. We go for the call here. River is a queen. We check again, and he bets 6,300. Now, I would expect him to check back some ace of heart type hands on the flop, and I think he's putting us on like a jack of hearts maybe. I don't really think he's doing that much with a queen. He might be value betting the queen of hearts though, because you know, the way we played it, it's pretty obvious we don't have the ace here. I decided to let it go though. I just think he has a lot of ace X with the ace of hearts here in his range. Um, Nice 6 is a fold. Ace 8 suited. You can definitely open this hand, but I think fold is okay-ish too from early position. 8 deuce is a fold. Queen 8 here versus a raise and a call. Gonna be laying it down. Pocket deuces again. Decided to lay it down here. There's a lot of potential rejamming stacks like the big blind, this guy, and as well as guy that might squeeze. Our implied odds aren't great versus this guy, so I just decided to fold here. This 5 is offsuit, is gonna be a fold from under the gun. So we decide to definitely call with the 7-8 suited in the big blind here. This guy has only 13 blinds behind. I expect him to be c-betting 100% of his range on this flop. Maybe he can check a hand like kings, queens, jacks, but I think he's just c-betting all of his broadways that don't have an ace here, and connectors as well. I check, he decides to bet like 1/3 of the pot. At this point, I think we have a lot of fold equity here, and obviously we have a flush draw, so we just go for the check jam. He calls, he has an ace unfortunately, but we managed to get there, and we take down 30 big blind pot, which is good. 6-4 suited here. I think this is a very good 3-bet spot, to be honest. Yeah, this is a good 3-bet spot. You would obviously rather do it with a blocker, but this is good too. The thing is, if you 3-bet here, you're basically committing yourself versus the big blind. Yeah, we decided to lay it down. 7-6 suited. We decide to call here from the cutoff. Interesting. And this is a board that he will most definitely c-bet at least, way over half of the time. We just have nothing going for us, and we lay it down. Queen 4, we decide to fold. I think we were around the bubble at this time, and yeah, I didn't want to call the big blind with a hand that has reverse implied odds. We're on the button with the ace-4 suited here. This is definitely a very good spot to be 3-betting, and we do so. We make it 9,600. The blinds fold, and the original raiser calls. So, interesting. We flop a good shot here with the backdoor flush draw. Original raiser checks. I go for the bet. I bet like 1/3 of the pot. I think I would bet this with all my hands, my value bets, and my bluffs. I just think this sizing does the job well. But in this particular spot, the guy decides to check call, which is interesting. The turn is a 7 now. At this point, his range is really looking like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, 8s potentially. So we basically need to decide if we want to bet here and jam any river. The problem is also that if we bet here and he decides to check raise, if he has a hand like a set, which is definitely possible, we're in a very tough spot. We have to fold, and we potentially have 8 straight outs at the moment. We will make a straight with any 6 and any deuce. So I decided to check it back here, and the river is a 6, which is obviously very good for us. Now the guy decides to bet like 2/3 of the pot, and we're very happy to call here. I mean, obviously if he has a hand like pocket 8s, that's gonna be bad, but I don't really see what else is beating us here. We go for a call, and we take down a huge pot. So that worked out for us. Have the pocket 10s here, go for the open, small blind rejams, we call, and we manage to hold. Ace 7 in the big blind with the section, we're just folding. 10-7. This is a okay jam. The guy has like 9 big blinds, so yeah, he lays it down. Now the cutoff decides to jam. Obviously with these stacks behind, we're just getting it in here, and he manages to hit a 3. So we lose this one. King 10. Gonna be a fold in general when we got a raise before us. Pocket 3s here, very easy 3-bet jam. Take it down. King 9 suited. This guy's just way too short, so I don't know. Flatting is out of the question here. I just think it's better with the short stacks behind us as well. So this is one of the interesting hands that I can remember. We decide to take a flop here. We're getting incredibly good odds. We had a semi-connected hand. Obviously we're not looking to just flop a pair and go crazy. We're looking to flop 2 pair, trips, stuff like that, straights. We complete, and we flop bottom 2 pair. The original raiser decides to check, and now the guy that flatted bets the pot. Now I don't ever think he has a flush with this sizing here. I would most likely put him on a jack with a spade like he has, or just the ace of spades, like an ace 10, maybe ace queen type hand with the ace of spades, that he's just, you know, betting the pot, looking for us to fold, and if not, you know, he's getting it in with his equity. We block the potential sets he might have. We are pretty confident he's gonna 3-bet jacks pre-flop. We block 4s and 7s, so that's like 2 combos that beat us. So with the original raiser checking, I think he's most likely gonna check. If he has a strong value hand here, he's checking the nuts, obviously, you know. He's not gonna check a 10 high flush, a queen high flush. So we're pretty confident that he doesn't have a lot of good hands as well. I decide to jam it in here. The guy snaps us with the king jack, and turn is good, but he gets there on the river with a higher 2 pair. So it's pretty unfortunate for us. But yeah. Queen 10 here. We're gonna be opening. And we take it down. Pocket fours. Easy jam. 7-8 is a fold. We get aces here though, and we see an open jam, which is pretty much the thing you would like to see when you have aces. We just go for the flat here. And we're happy to see that the guy has king jack, but we are not happy with this turn, and yeah, we lose a big one here. King 7. I decide to check it. Decide to call this flop. He checks. We check back. I mean, at this point, I think he might be value betting some queens on the river. He shouldn't really have. In retrospect, I might, if I went with the call on the flop, I might have had to call the river there. Just all the jack eights, jack tens, brick. Bad thing is he might have a hand like king jack that beats us. So yeah, I'm not really happy with the way I played that hand. Starting with the pre-flop action, I should have probably raised here. Anyway, we fold the river. Queen jack opening here. We get a flat. We check it back. We check it again. And at this point, okay, so this is interesting. I would definitely play a lot of my overpairs like this. Not much reason to bet this flop when the 7 hits again, and once the other 7 hits, there's a full house on the board. I think in general, if we have an overpair, if this guy had a better pair than fours, like 5s, 6s, 8s, 9s, I would expect him always to lead the river, just because we're going to be calling for a split a lot here. But if I had a hand like an overpair, which I would sometimes play exactly the same way by checking back twice, I would always jam for value here, so I just decided to pile it in, get him off the split. He folded, so that was a good result for us. Ace king, we're raising under the gun, and 2 calls. At this point, with 2 players in the hand, relatively wet board, I'm just going for the check. Going for the check again. This guy bets. We lay it down. Okay, so we have king 9 and on the button here. We decide to open. We have king 9 offsuit on the button here. Pretty standard open. Big blinds decides to defend. Flop comes queen deuce 4, all hearts. We go for the c bet here. I think we take it down on this texture a lot, and the villain decides to min raises. This is very weird. He's basically saying he has a flush or a set, even though I would expect him to raise bigger with a set and check call his stronger flushes. So he might play some queens without a heart the same way, in which case our flush draw would be good and we're getting the odds to call, and he might just have some, you know, air balls here, which is pretty much like what he has, but he actually has some showdown. So I decided to call. And now on the turn, when he decides to check, I'm pretty confident that he doesn't have a queen. He would bet his small flushes as well to protect from a potential bigger flush draw. And like I said, I would expect him to raise a set or like a two pair type hand bigger on the flop. The thing is, I'm trying to keep my range balanced here, and if I had a hand like King Queen with the King of Hearts, or like Queen Jack with the Jack of Hearts, like any Queen with a heart, I would definitely check it back here. Um, so I decided to check back, like I would play those particular top pair hands, and of course some uh, flopped nut flushes. And the river comes the six of clubs. He decides to check again, and at this point, I think I decide to bet here. Yeah, I bet half the pot because this is the way I would play all my queens here. I would value bet them, and he decides to call. So we get punished here. Yeah. In retrospect, I think I should have probably bet the turn. Uh, he's probably calling, putting us on the Ace of Hearts, which if I had, I would probably play more aggressively. So yeah, pretty weird hand, but he decided to call. It was the correct call. He had us beat, and we go on to the next hand. We're down to 15 blinds. Here we have King 9 offsuit again, this time on the cutoff. I think it's a reasonable shove. We take it down. Jack deuce is gonna be a fold. Jack 5 as well. And we have King Queen offsuit on 13 blinds under the gun. Pretty standard shove. The big blind wakes up with Ace King, and he manages to hold. So we bust at around 20th place in the tournament. Some interesting spots in this hand history. It's my first time doing this in video format, so I'll try to incorporate some ICMizer stuff for the future, because we're gonna be making more of these in order to make the content more interesting. So yeah, that was the hand history. I hope you enjoyed it. Signing off here, and see you guys soon.